Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Star Wars Rebels is over, for better or worse, once again leaving a gaping hole in our heart which we usually reserve for a Star Wars themed cartoon. Today we'll be looking at the final episodes and look at everything right with those episodes. For those of you who are looking for something a bit more critical, don't worry, our next video will cover everything wrong with these episodes, so don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on those videos. We start out episode 15 aptly titled Family Reunion and Farewell, with Ezra looking at a picture of his family. Losing his mother and father at a young age, Ezra was sent on a collision course with the Rebel Alliance. And now without parents, a Jedi Order, or even Jedi Master to call family, the Spectres are the only thing left that can fill that void inside of him. But Ezra is no longer that self-centered street urchin he was just a few years ago. With Kanan's departure, the young Jedi has now fully matured and is ready to lead his people to free Lothal from the crutches of the Empire, which is kind of what he wanted to do since the beginning of Episode 1, bringing his journey full circle. But it won't be the Rebel Alliance that comes to his aid. This mission was for Lothal.
This mission isn't for the Rebellion.
It's for Ezra. We are liberating his home, and we need your help.
The wider Rebel Alliance has always remained in the peripherals of the Rebel storyline. They're a distant ally, but in the end, the Spectres and Lothal can only rely on each other if they want to create change. Which is kind of realistic if you think about it. The Rebels at best had only a few dozen ships. It was mainly focused on staying alive and fighting strategic battles that were crucial to the war effort, like carrying out a terrorist attack against the Death Star or murdering the Kind Emperor. In most places in the galaxy, local forces like the Lothal rebels had to find a way to overthrow their own local Imperial despots. Keeping with that theme, the Spectres do just that, and reunite with a few of their old allies. Clone Commando Gregor and Clone Commander Wolf have rejoined Captain Rex. Hondo has come to the aid of Ezra once again, saying,
"For that boy, there is nothing I would not do."
Ketsu Anyo returns once again to fight alongside her Mandalorian sister. It's nice to see all these faces return, especially the ones from the Clone Wars. Not only is this a family reunion for the series, it's also a family reunion for both of the iconic Star Wars shows helmed by Dave Filoni. As we get older, we're forced to say goodbye to some old friends, so it's always a good surprise to see them once again. Ezra must lead his merry band of freedom fighters on a very daring mission to take over the Imperial Command Center on Lothal, otherwise known as the Dome. They'll do this by using Governor Price, who was captured in a previous episode, to trick their way past security. On the way to the Dome, Ezra whispers a cryptic message to Sabine that foreshadows what's to come. Besides Kanan, no one else has a closer bond to Ezra than her. After all, it was Ezra who trained Sabine to wield the Darksaber, the only lightsaber ever made for a Mandalorian. Anyway, the Rebels infiltrate the Lothal Imperial Command Center in typical Rebel fashion, launching a bold frontal assault that depended on using a flying Ugnaught
They can fly.
as a distraction. Their goal is to create a false evacuation notice and lead all the Imperial forces on Lothal back to the Dome, and then launch that dome into space, getting rid of the Imperial garrison forever. Unfortunately, Thrawn is tipped off about the attack by his terrifying little Nagri assassin. Props to the Rebels, by the way, for bringing back some of the best parts of the expanded universe, including Thrawn. I think they even mentioned Admiral Gilad Pellaeon in one of the later scenes, right before he most likely was killed by a bunch of space whales.
Get Captain Pellaeon.
So they came out of hyperspace. I've never seen them.
Pellaeon was Thrawn's protege in the original Legends Thrawn series. Anyway, the Rebels managed to gather all the Imperial forces within the Dome, but Thrawn arrives just in time with a fleet of Star Destroyers threatening to destroy the capital city, creating a sort of Mexican standoff between the Rebels and the Imperials. Ezra decides to surrender himself to Thrawn to save the city, while the rest of the Rebels rush to retake the city's shield generators from the Imperials so that they can protect the citizens of Lothal from Thrawn's Star Destroyers. This is kind of where the Rebels follows the traditional Star Wars finale format. The Jedi must go by himself to face the big baddie, while a handful of Rebels must fight their own battle against the Imperial forces. While it's pretty cliche, this sequence of events is carried out very well. The few times the Rebel series decide to get emotional are powerful, because of how not serious it usually is. As Ezra sneaks away from the Rebels to face Thrawn, he shares one last emotional glance with Sabine, who trusts Ezra so much that she's willing to let him go to his unknown fate. It's an immensely sad scene because for all we know, the Spectres will never see Ezra again. The young Jedi is turned over to Thrawn, who scoffs at the morally driven Jedi Order and their inability to think strategically. But Thrawn is only here as a subordinate. The main reason Ezra was here was because the Emperor had requested it. The next scene is probably one of my favorite in the entire series. Appearing in hologram, the Emperor appears in a white robe without any disfigurations. He offers Ezra a very simple thing, a second chance to be with his family. He's even reconstructed a part of the LOTHAL temple within the Star Destroyers so that Ezra can go inside once again to one specific portal, which probably is one of the most expensive and really well thought out and unique gifts one person can give to another. So I guess the Emperor isn't all that bad. Inside that portal is an opportunity for Ezra to save his parents. There's a time when the young Jedi would have walked across the entire galaxy to see his parents once again. There's a time when Ezra would have done horrible things to be reunited with his mother and father. But Ezra is a changed person. He learned in previous episodes that some things aren't meant to be changed. If he agrees to return to his parents, his current life is forever destroyed. The life in which he joins the Spectres, becomes a Jedi, saves his friends countless times from danger, and ultimately leads them to victory against the Empire. By saving his parents, he turns his back on the family that adopted him and the future of Lothal. That's the Emperor's game, to erase all the damage Ezra ever created by never allowing him to join the Spectres in the first place. It's an interesting twist, and I guess that means time travel is definitely now a thing in Star Wars. Ezra, having fully matured, resists the Emperor and says goodbye to his parents one last time before destroying the temple again. He then fights his way through the ship, slaughtering Imperials, and then confronts Thrawn. And that's when the Eagles arrive.
The Eagles are coming!
I mean space whales. I mean Purgle. But that we'll talk more about in the next episode. There is a truly epic scene that follows as Thrawn fights his way through a swarm of tentacles amidst a beautifully epic musical score. They don't always go all out in the Rebels series when it comes to soundtrack, but when they do it, it's oftentimes magical. This whole sequence kind of reminds me of that time Johnny Depp did the same thing on his ship. For the first time in the series, Thrawn is afraid. He's no longer in control. It's now Ezra who's cold, calm, and collected. Then Ezra, using his connection with the Purgle, commands his whale buddies to fly into hyperspace, with the Star Destroyer in tow. Now let's forget for a second that the bridge is exposed to vacuum, or that the giant space whales have organic hyperdrives. This actually sets up a very interesting possibility, because Ezra and Thrawn are reportedly heading towards the unknown region. And we all know that Thrawn, who is Chiss, is originally from the unknown region. And supposedly the Chiss are facing some great threat, which is why Thrawn has given his services to the Emperor in the first place. Thrawn hopes that one day the Empire could aid his own people in combating that threat. We also know that Palpatine is aware of this threat. He set several observatories around the galaxy that are all looking outwards towards the unknown region. Who is it? Well, we're probably gonna have to discuss that in another video. Now, back on Lothal, the Rebels finally have an opening to carry out their final objective, which is to send the giant dome flying into the air far away from the surface so that they can detonate it, which they do, murdering thousands if not hundreds of thousands of Imperials, including many non-combat personnel and civilian contractors, like Steve, who just purchased a lovely plot of land on the outskirts of Lothal where he just started building a new house. He's also financed a beautiful new income land speeder. Steve leaves all of that financial responsibility to his wife and kids, who probably will have to sell themselves off to slavery in order to avoid debtor's prison. Most likely they'll end up working in a Kessel spice mine. Don't be Steve. This message was brought to you by the Mid-Rim Life Insurance Company, making sure your loved ones don't end up in spice mines since Order 66. Moving on, as expected, the hardened rebel extremists don't even bat an eye after all the death and destruction they have caused. Notice all the debris flying out of the sky. That's probably a couple million tons of metal and human bodies that will eventually crash down on the capital city. Ezra leaves a message for the crew of the Ghost, including another reminder to Sabine that he is depending on her. Let's just say it has something to do with the fact that she's in the same bloodline as the only Mandalorian Jedi, and that Force-sensitive individuals oftentimes have a strong connection to those who are important to them. We also get a nice epilogue that shows what happens to the rest of the crew. Apparently Star Wars now supports interspecies relationships, which is very progressive. So yeah, it's canon now that Twi'leks and humans can have babies, which I'm sure is really exciting for some of you out there. Sometimes when a show goes on for too long, we forget where it started. Sometimes even the creators forget where it started. And when a show forgets its roots, it gets lost. Luckily, that didn't happen for the Rebels. They knew exactly when to end it, and they did it the right way. I can't wait for the next cartoon that comes from Dave Filoni and crew. Whether you like his cartoons or not, there's no denying the man has a passion and, more importantly, respect for the Star Wars universe. Don't forget to tune in next time where we're going to go over everything wrong with this last episode. Don't forget to subscribe and like us on Facebook so you don't miss out on those episodes. Thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.